Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Trades Talk. I've got an exciting guest in the studio today, Ron McCabe with Everbearing Services, a digital marketing company focused exclusively on the landscape industry. And we are going to talk about all things landscaping, all things marketing. And Ron's got a heck of a story to share with us. So Ron, welcome to the podcast today. So excited to have you on.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks for having me here.
So Ron, you and I got to be on your podcast a couple of weeks ago. Had a blast doing that. You and I have got to know each other a little bit over the last few months. I would love for you to share, just as an entry point here to our listeners, how did you get involved with the landscape industry? Because it's not your typical story of pushing a lawnmower when you were 8 years old, like so many of the people I talked to. This was a very unique point in your life where you were facing some challenges, and the landscape industry kind of became a bit of a saving grace for you and really transformed your life. So I just think that story is so amazing for our listeners to hear.
Cool, man. Although I did have Ron and Rob's home improvement service in high school. Although Rob,
yes,
yeah. So I was mowing lawns and cleaning up yards in high school, and it's kind of wild that I'm back in the landscaping industry after all that. But
well, there you go. We learn something new every day. I love that.
Yeah. So I was, still am a technologist, and I've got like 14 patents issued and 22 pending around cloud computing.
Wow.
In the early 90s, I architected something called Visa Local Bus, which is basically what PCI Bus is based on. So pretty much every computer today ships based on that early R&D.
Wow.
And kind of what happened with me. So everybody talks about the excitement of Silicon Valley, but what they don't talk about, and you may be aware of this, Justin, just because of your proximity, is the hard work. And that you pretty much, I was working 120-hour weeks for decades.
120. What does that look like on a Saturday and Sunday? There is no Saturdays and Sundays, right? It's just
every day. Like, it hit a point, and this sounds crazy, but I would literally write down a note of where I was. And, when I woke up, I'm like, oh, I'm in Cleveland, or, I'm wherever, right? And,
just so you could remind yourself in the morning where you are. Dang.
Right. Yeah, no. And so, like, you don't think about it, but like Marriott courtyards, for example, all pretty much look the same. It doesn't matter where you are. And so there's no like reference points. And so it was kind of crazy. And I admit I'd sleep in the office if I needed to or what have you. But it was that level of intensity that was required to do some of the things I did. And so, in 2009, I had a fluke accident, and I tripped, and my leg went to the right at 90 degrees at my knee. That's why I kind of hobble around now. And essentially, because of that fluke accident, I ended up in a hospital, and because I'd worked myself so hard, I went septic and almost died. Wow. And so anyway, I had to do a little self-reflection. And by the way, for anyone out there that's working crazy hours, it's like my advice is everything works until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it's really bad. And, so basically I was in the hospital bed, and I was stressed out and kind of going, what am I going to do? And I admit a little bored. And so I'd spent about $500,000 on digital marketing. Every time another round of investors came in, they were like, oh, you need to spend money on digital marketing. And
yeah,
so,
this is like mid 2000s, 2005, 2008, 2009.
Yep.
Everyone was like, print is dead. You got to go digital. You got to build your website. I remember all that. That was a big transformation. I'm sure in technology, you're at the epicenter of that transition. That had to be interesting to go through that every year. Probably was a big change.
Yeah, no, it was kind of crazy. And basically I shouldn't admit this, but I remember it was I think 1996, pre-2000, we literally had an argument with the investors on whether we should have a website or not. Which is pretty insane. And, when you look where things have come, so there's something called NCSA Telnet. And when I was working with the U of I and National Center for Supercomputing, that was a standard put in place, and that's kind of the basis for like a modern browser and communications between multiple platforms. And
Wow.
so, yeah, no, I've seen just an amazing amount of change. And, to think about it now, there's was on average about 400 to 700 changes to the search engines every year. And now with the advent of AI, we're looking at not exponential, but just thousands and thousands of changes. And so it's gone from this thing that you might have that would be kind of cool, curiosity, to pretty much the center of everything we do right now. And
Wow.
and when I started Everbearing, kind of what happened is I was like, hey, I'm going to manage this digital marketing better. And I go in there and go on, it must be me. And as I studied it, I realized I'd basically been ripped off for about $500,000. And so when we started Everbearing, it was just kind of like, okay, we're just not going to do what these guys did to me, and we're just going to take care of the clients. And with my math background, I naturally kind of gravitated towards SEO.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the start of Everbearing and where, kind of how we got going. The way I got into the industry is a little different that you may or may not relate to is, in my opinion, before you start a business, you want to know what your exit is. And so
only the best.
Yeah, and so what I did when I started is first of all, I determined that content, like what you're writing about, kind of drives all of your digital marketing. And I came upon the green industry and looked at landscaping. And at that time, there was over 500,000 landscapers and continuing to grow. And then if you look at associated people, you were over 1 million different companies. And there really hasn't been a strong digital marketing agency in that space. And, I'm like, hey, this is some content I can enjoy. I personally love horticulture and gardening and things like that. And so I'm like, this is content that I like. And initially I really served the whole green industry and garden centers and things like that. But landscapers and landscaping is where I clicked, and the people, kind of my people. And so that's why I ended up just niching down just to landscaping.
Smart. And I think it's so smart. I think a lot of digital marketing companies out there try to be everything to everyone. And you end up just with this really a vanilla approach to marketing. And so, especially digital marketing. So how do you go about, when we talk about digital marketing, can you explain that to people who may just, I think there's a lot of landscapers out there that they think digital marketing, they think, okay, website SEO. Like, what else? So what else is there to digital marketing besides having a good website and showing up on Google?
Well, so that's a huge open-ended question.
It is.
But so first of all, there's different levels, and kind of a foundation is you've got to get your local SEO set up, which is your Google and Google Business Profile, which everybody's aware of, and your Bing Places, which a lot of people are not aware of, and that's kind of the Google equivalent. Side tip for you is that serves the 5% of the market that tends to be higher income or people with more money. So it's a lot of times managers or older people who don't know to change their browser to Google or don't want to bother. And so getting that set up, and we all like maybe want to say expletives, but it's also if you're dealing with consumers, you want to set up Yelp and kind of your local presence. And a lot of people don't even get that set up right. They just kind of throw something together. And the search engines definitely, like if you've got typos or extra spaces or things like that, like it's all these niggly things that you've got to get right. And so on the local side, you've got to get that established right. And then you have to maintain it once it's set up. And similarly with the website, you have to do the same. But what I think people don't know or really think about is, first of all, your online presence and what you do online is like another salesperson. And you want the website and everything you do online to validate whatever you and your team is saying, because your customers are going to go to the website to validate things. Yeah. And customers are looking for not what you did, they want to know what you know. So the stickiest thing, if you're in design build, is galleries. If you're in maintenance, talking about your processes and what you do and why you do it that way, which isn't maybe exciting to you, but it's exciting to your clients because they want to know that they're dealing with the right people. And you have all these different ways to reach out to your client base. And you have the website and you have local, but then you can do other things like, for example, if you look at commercial landscaping, people go, oh, you can't do digital marketing for commercial landscaping. Well, yes, you can, but it's different. So first of all, your social media is LinkedIn. It's not like Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah, if you're doing B2B work, right?
Yeah, and the other thing, and this is kind of one of those things that it's, to me, the craziest thing, is email is really good for targeting. And so in a case like that, you can use digital marketing tools to get lists based on a very, very specific ideal customer profile and reach out to people. And as you know, and I'm using commercial just because it's like the hardest, right?
I agree. Yeah. Commercial maintenance, everyone's going after it.
Everybody's after it, but also, you can have, I bet you've had like 60-month sales processes or longer with these people.
I just want to share. Yeah. So we were working on this HOA. We first bid it in 2017 and we finally landed that contract earlier this year of 2025. So that's a 7-year, 8-year sales process. And every year we bid that job. And every year they said, we want to hire you, but we can't afford you yet. We can't afford you yet. We can't. And then finally their water bill was so out of control that we just said, look, we guarantee that we'll save you X amount on water. And it'll be actually a net positive on your P&L for the year. And and to the point, we're saving them an incredible amount on water this summer. So you're right. You've got to be able to be in the gauntlet, the marathon of the sales process that is commercial maintenance.
Exactly. And so to think about that process, that entire time, you don't want to screw up, meaning, you don't want to get back to that potential customer that you had a problem. And then when the problem occurs, and in this case, that's not completely relevant, but you want to show up on search as the top option.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, that marathon, how do you stay top of mind? And so, and again, this is kind of one of those weird things. Have you ever noticed that when a product comes out, you'll see like 2 or 3 ads and you'll see like stuff on radio and there's all this stuff coming in all the time about the product for about the first 90 days?
Okay.
So the reason for that is it takes 6 impressions on a consumer of anything, whether it's consumer or business to business, to do anything at all. But at 80, and this is like science, it's kind of crazy. At 89 impressions, if everything else is equal, they'll deal with you. And so, for example, I was at a trade show and I had this lady come up and talk to me like I was her best friend. And she's like, I haven't done a website or any digital marketing, but I knew that when I was going to do it, I was going to do it with you. And literally I'd been emailing her for like 5 years and had no idea who this woman was.
Wow.
And, but similarly, like on commercial maintenance, what you're doing with those LinkedIn posts and those emails is programming that client to think of you when the opportunity comes up. And so the thing about digital marketing is you've got all these tools that you use for different reasons. I just gave you kind of an example about LinkedIn and email. And you use them for different reasons.
Right.
To get a different result. And a lot of people don't think about that. So one of the things that we do unfortunately a lot of digital marketing agencies have their bit that they do. But, we kind of have everybody's a snowflake mentality, and that there are a lot of things the same, but there's also things that are different about every company and their approach. And essentially, you want to look deeply at your sales process and go, how can the digital marketing support that? So if you're like consumer design build, that's very transactional. So that's very different than
right.
commercial maintenance.
So when we talk about email campaigns, I think this is often underutilized in the landscape industry. Is there any strategies that you go about when let's just say on commercial, you're trying to target commercial maintenance and you have an email list of property managers in your area? What would be one of the strategies that you would implement to ensure that email campaign, I think a lot of people are worried about annoying or spamming their email list. How would you go about doing that without spamming and annoying those potential clients?
So, and that's the thing, and I'm sure you've received them, like the emails where somebody spams you with like 6 emails a month.
Yeah.
And it's like not relevant information, or it's just like, hello, I'm here. Right.
Yeah.
But you're sitting there as the recipient going, why are you sending me this? And so it's really important to put together high quality content that your target audience wants to read, and consistently present yourself as a leader in your space. And, the other thing is people want to send a ton of emails to people all at once. And the reality is like you said, it's a marathon. So maybe you only send 1 email a month, but you make sure that it's really high quality and that it's going to help the recipient. So the number one rule is to be helpful,
provide value.
And then you want to present your company in a positive and knowledgeable way.
Yeah, go ahead.
And again, let them know about anything, if there's changes in laws or if there's events that are relevant to them. You want to be a resource.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think completely agree. It's like if we can add value to our clients through those email campaigns, and once a month we're helping them know that, hey, like one big thing with the Pyrus Caleriana trees or pear trees, non-fruiting pear trees in California is a fire blight. It's a major issue. And it'll take out a whole colony or a whole community. So if you can get ahead of that in February and do some systemic, work with those trees to help prevent the fire blight, you can be way ahead. So if you, and we know that water is always an issue in California, and this, and honestly, it's becoming an issue across the country. So each area, maybe you're in the Northeast and you got to hit them with a warning about snow coming up in the winter, and do you have your icing plan and all this? So there's always something to be bringing up to our property managers that they would be appreciative of you bringing to their attention. So it's just a matter of doing that in a respectful and like you kind of said, like a meaningful way that makes a positive impact on your brand. So they start to associate that. Yeah, I like that. And also, I think back that up with like really well branded trucks too. because then they start to connect everything. Otherwise, you're just another logo in the sea of trades.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing is you want to have a consistent image and brand across all your platforms. I'm a big believer in, and not everybody likes this, but I love using tracking numbers on vehicles and on yard signs and things like that, because then where the lead is, kind of how people are coming into you and how that source works. And like you're saying, you want to have a good brand on your trucks. You want to have clean equipment, the way your crews present themselves out in the field. And that should flow right over into your digital. And you want to have a consistent message across all of your platforms.
Well said. And I think, too, people forget about marketing. It becomes a backseat when they're busy. And then when they're slow, it's like, oh, we got to do marketing, market. And I don't, like, what's your take on that? I don't think that's a great idea. But when it comes to marketing, is it like a faucet we can turn on and off? Or is it more of just like a constant flow that we need to keep running to keep our business and our brand at top of mind for our customers?
Right. Well, so first of all, and as you know, things have shifted.
They're shifting.
Yeah, shifting
every day.
Yeah, and so you want to always have marketing because there's a concept of momentum, and think of it this way: the people that have been marketing, if you haven't, you've got to catch up. So if they're already dominating search, it's going to take 6 to 12 months to even come on the radar. If there's other guys that are really doing a good job, it's not going to be overnight, and you can do it from the side with something called long tail keywords, which are just really, really specific keyword strings.
So give me like an example of maybe a long tail keyword that we would utilize.
Okay. So let's think about it, and and this might relate to you.
Yeah.
But like water-wise maintenance or organic maintenance. And so that may not be everyone, but it's really, really targeted. And this is kind of a different example, but we worked with a nonprofit in California that was working against like Sandiego.org and things like that. And they had an event center that funded the nonprofit, and they taught people who had issues culinary arts. So it was kind of crazy because there was like 5,000-10,000 searches a month for quinceañeras, for example, a big Hispanic population. However, there was only like 100 to 150, maybe 200 for like organic quinceañera or sustainable quinceañera, things like that. But and this is a really important concept around keywords, is you want to look at the conversion, not the volume. And so in this case, even though there were a ton of searches around the general term, the conversion was like less than 1%. Well, these little short long tail keywords, not only do they target the exact customer you want, but the conversion rate's like 10 or 15%.
Oh, that's huge.
Sometimes as high as 20. And so even though there's only 150 searches, you're getting 15 solid leads. That's not terrible. And so that's one thing I will say on your marketing. Everybody wants to do the shotgun.
Yeah.
But the trick is to really do a target. I had older brothers, and I was the victim of them. They, at like 5, they would trade their nickels, because they're bigger, for my dimes. And so they'd be, hey, I'll give you this nickel, it's bigger. And 5-year-old, I'm like, oh, okay, great. And most SEOs, they talk all the time about traffic, but traffic is kind of the loser's game. It's actually, you want to focus on showing up on those targeted keywords that are directly targeting your client.
So well said. Such a great concept here, because I think a lot of times we think about digital marketing and SEO almost as if we're selling a product, but we're not really selling a $5 gizmo or a Yeti drink cooler or something. Like, we're selling this service that requires, in most cases, a conversation to happen to allow the client to book with us and pay us. So very rare do I find a landscape company having a fully automated booking system where the client can actually buy something online. We're trying to work towards that because I really think that's how our consumers want to buy. But when you don't have that, and I'd say 99% of landscapers do not have an online buy button. They have a book a consultation or book a meeting or whatever. Traffic is not going to get you very far. It's truly what you're saying. It's the quality incoming leads, and long tail keywords is exactly how you do that. And so I think if you're in any niche, let's just say you're design build, but you specialize in high-rise decks and you're in a mountainous area. I got a buddy who does this exact thing. And so in the Santa Cruz Mountains, his thing is like, if you need a deck built, you call these guys when it's above one story. And I don't know, maybe he's even listening to this and I'm giving him some free advice, but the idea here is like, you could create a long tail keyword of, 2-story or high-rise decks in Felton, California, or what have you, where people are going to actually be searching.
Exactly.
So this very unique kind of niche that you have. And if you have something that solves a problem of your customers, I feel like when people run into problems, they typically go to Google and search for help with those problems.
Exactly.
So like, let's say you're really good at drainage. Well, then you want to have a bunch of long tail keywords around drainage or house flooding or erosion control. Or okay, I'm following now. This is great. This is great, Ron. I appreciate this content.
Yeah, well, and the other thing that's really interesting to me is visual cues.
Okay.
So there's two things I'd like to talk about based on what you brought up is the compression on response time and visual cues. And so the example of visual cues is I had a client that did pots. And we're not talking $50 pots. She would do these $2,000 to $5,000 pots for, people in the Puget Sound. And she was having people, and this is kind of where this happened about 15 years ago. She was having people call her, and housewives, and saying, "Hey, for $50, will you help me design a pot?" And what we did is I said, "Okay, well, get me the most expensive, beautiful installation of your pots. Give me photos of that."
Yeah.
And so we ended up with these photos with the estates looking out over the Puget Sound and gorgeous, multi-million-dollar landscapes that happen to have pots in them. And so what happened for her was, one, she stopped getting those calls because people would look at the website and go, "Wait, oh no, she's not for me. These are $1,000 pots."
Yeah.
But the other interesting side effect on those visual cues is, guess what happened? She started getting calls from higher end clients than she was able to access before, because they were like, "Oh, wait, she knows how to deal. She understands my problems."
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, and so if you don't want to have low end consumers, you don't want to show that kind of landscape. If you want that type of consumer, that's the thing. Think about who your audience is and who you're targeting. And you want to have visual cues as well as your content reflect who you're targeting.
So that's so great. So well said. It's such a good reminder, because I think a lot of times we want to just attract every possible lead we can attract because we want to grow. And it
Right.
seems, it almost seems like we're going in the wrong direction when we niche down and say, all right, we're only going to focus on luxury homeowners. But the funny thing is, like, when you put luxury in front of landscaping, and now it's luxury landscaping, you're going to attract a different type of client. And if you are going after that, great. But some people, like, you aren't going after luxury homeowners. You want the HOA, and you just want the quick $50 service every week or what have you. And that's fine too. Just speak to those people and it seems like when you speak to your people, you tend to grow a lot faster and a lot
Right.
better than others.
Right. And, you don't want everybody. And the problem is, and this is like, so my company has grown quite a few companies from like pretty much zero or under 50,000 up to multi-million dollar companies. And it's kind of funny when people are starting out, pretty much if somebody can fog a mirror and write them a check, they're a client, right?
Yeah.
But as they grow, they start to complain about their leads and the quality of their leads. And it's inevitably that they're getting all these small, tiny, customers, which used to be kind of their bread and butter. And you have to shift from that kind of general, I'm a landscaper. You have to figure out who you are and just really laser focus on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's really good take for everybody. Now, so I want to pivot a little bit here, Ron. I want to talk a little bit about this thing that you've got a lot of experience with because of your challenges and lessons learned, but it's work-life balance and work-life integration. So how, going through all the challenges that you've gone through, I think work-life integration, work-life balance, whatever we want to call it, is always a topic of conversation in late summer in our industry. Now, people tend to forget about this in March because they're just ready to get back to work. But September is always the time I hear people, man, I'm so burnt out. I'm tired. I've really worked hard this year. What are some of those things that you put in place in your life to kind of rebalance and realign your priorities coming out of that really dark time of 2009, 2010, 2011?
So first of all, I've got to constantly work on it.
Yeah.
To me, my sport is business. Like I love, playing the game. And so I have to force myself to stop. And the first thing I'll say is don't ever get to the point that I got to, which was, my choice was to figure out how to pull myself out of it. Or, they were talking about like putting my affairs in order type of thing. Like if I'd have just kept going, if I wanted to be here, I couldn't keep going like I was. And you don't ever want to get to that point.
Looking back, was there any indications that you ignored of your body saying you were past that point that you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I mean, I think at that time, my weight was out of control. At one point, I was 589 pounds.
Wow. Yeah.
So I've lost like 270 pounds.
Congratulations, man.
Which pretty much, people don't think is possible, but you can do it.
Yeah.
And, I'd had an appendix burst and I had other things that I didn't catch it because I was so focused on work that it became pretty, kind of a more major deal than it needed to be.
Yeah.
And, but just generally, I think the scary thing a lot of times is that things kind of work and your body hits a stage where it just says no, and that's kind of when bad things happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of times people think there's going to be a huge amount of warning, but it seems like things are working okay. And I've seen this over and over again with people. And so it's important to look for those warnings, but also understand that if you're working unreasonable amounts, you can get away with it for a while, but eventually it comes back on you.
Yeah.
And, in my end, obviously I eat a really clean diet now. So I'm pretty careful about what I eat and what I put in. And I think that affects your energy at work.
Oh, yeah.
And just overall, how the level of performance you have. And again, and I think you've made comments about this, but working in personal care, like working out every day, personally, my big challenge there is originally they were like, oh, the best you ever will do is with a walker or maybe a cane. And, I'm on the verge of just walking normally, but that's taken, thousands of hours of physical therapy, and again, working out in the gym and lifting weights and doing all these things to keep yourself mobile.
Yeah, that I think it's underrated how important diet and exercise are, and sleep too. Like,
Yeah.
you eat clean, you work out 5 days a week, and you get 7 hours of sleep or more every day. You can do a lot of amazing things in life. But when you get really busy, I know for me, and you approach that, for me, it's approaching that like 90 to 100 hours of true work every week where I start to not prioritize my diet. That's the first thing to
Right.
go. The second thing to go is my sleep. And then the third thing to go is my exercise. And when I find myself, like last week, I was traveling constantly. I had a wedding I was in, and then I flew to Dallas, and I flew back to LA, and I had meetings all day back at home, and then I had another wedding on Saturday. So in this 7-day period, it was just nonstop.
Right.
But I found a way to get my sleep. I found a way to work out. I found a way to eat decently clean on the road, which is hard. You just got to have you got to not indulge on the big, the Big Mac and the fries when it's easy, and just say, look, I'm just going to get a chicken salad with extra chicken and just stick with that.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of it in terms of work-life balance and being healthy in that mode. And I want to make sure people hear this too, is like, it's okay to work a lot. It is like, I think it's okay to put your time in. It's just make sure that you're still getting those non-negotiables done for your personal life and making sure that, those things are happening. Ron, I want to ask a question. This is like a very interesting concept I've been studying lately, which is a Monday through Friday work week. And what is your take on that in terms of how do you kind of operate your day-to-day today? Is it a 5-day a week kind of thing? Or are you more of a 7-day a week, but you work less hours? What's kind of your current rhythm in terms of this kind of like, quote unquote work week right now?
So I try to keep it at 5 days, and obviously emergencies come up where you've got to work on the weekends. But I think it's really important for your mental health and your focus to have some time that you're not on.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is you start to have diminishing returns the more hours you put in, and your mental acuity goes down. Your actual work output goes down. So you're kind of working against yourself if you work too many hours.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's different. You can't just like assign like a number of hours per week that you work, but there's probably some indications where people out there listening probably know where they start to get diminishing returns past a certain point, whether it's a certain amount of hours in a day or a certain amount of hours in a week or a certain amount of days in a week. Sometimes, like you said, like having that reset is really, really important.
Yeah. Well, and I know this is hopefully not too far afield, but I wear a Whoop. I know others wear Aura rings, but having something that kind of give you feedback. I thought that's what it was, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
But having a monitor that kind of lets you know, because if you make observations about, I did this, and then look at what look at my recovery and my performance, look at my sleep. The other thing I recommend, like you don't want to be a diabetic when you get this. I would recommend doing it sooner than later, is getting a CGM, monitoring your blood sugars, because what you'll notice when you get that is when you're like being busy and engaged is okay. But if you're truly stressed, your blood sugars will start to go up, and that's damaging your body. But your blood sugar is like this huge like warning signal about what's going on in your work day and if you're getting effective workouts and everything else.
Interesting. I've never heard that before. That's awesome.
That's a Ron McCabe theory.
Yeah. Okay. I like it.
I've done a lot of observation. The other thing that's pretty crazy is I feel like people's bodies process foods differently.
Yep.
And so the part that's crazy for me is I'll have a food that I think is going to totally drive my blood sugar up, and it doesn't. And then one I think, oh, that one's really safe, and it will cause problems. And so, and again, this is kind of a hypothesis of mine, is that if there's foods that your body doesn't process well, it tends to drive your blood sugar.
Yeah, so it's almost like a leading indicator.
Exactly. And I don't know, they're really cheap. I think you can get them for like $60 a month now. And, that in contrast to your overall health, and then things like the Aura Ring or the Whoop, kind of managing the other aspects, it's a way to kind of stay on track and measure things. I think we all like to measure things.
Yeah, we like KPIs. We like to
Exactly.
see how we're doing. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, blood sugar. I'm still going back to that because I'm like, if you can have a leading indicator on your health as a human around stress, and yeah, I love the Aura Ring. It definitely helps me understand when I was in stress and not stress states. But the more leading indicators we can have, the better. And I'm doing a leadership training course with my team right now. It's called the Leadership Accelerator 6-week plan that I brought a bunch of our like mid-level and entry-level managers, now leaders, into. And, they're like waiting to be taught how to become a leader. And I'm teaching them how to eat healthy. I'm teaching them how to create good routines. I'm teaching them calendar management. And I was like, guys, we got to build a foundation before you can become a level 5 leader. You got to build out level 1. And what's really interesting in that is when you are in control of your day in terms of your calendar and you're doing the things that bring you a lot of energy and add a lot of value to the company, you can work 12 or 13 hours and feel really good after the end of the day. You're not really feeling exhausted or stressed out. People listening to this have had those days where you got up at 5 a.m. and you were at the yard at 5:30 and you worked and you left the office at 7 p.m. and you got home and you weren't very tired. Like, you're like, I just worked 14 hours. I should be exhausted. And you weren't. And then you have those
You're
days.
energized, right?
Yeah, you're in flow state. And then you have those days where you work 8 hours and you get home and you are just toast because you're in stress mode all day. And I think a lot of it goes back to like playing to our strengths and knowing that we provided value to the company and we provided value to our peers. Yeah, I think that's huge.
Yep. No, I totally 100% agree. And, when you look at people over time, a lot of times people come out of the gate really hot and they'll perform for a while, but then their performance goes down. And so it's really important to kind of manage it like a marathon. And like you say, manage your flow state, understand there's going to be days that are just days you've got to get through. But again, manage that.
Yeah. I think another tip too that I was given by a mentor was it's okay when you're overly stressed and you're overwhelmed. It's okay to just like take a day and almost like call in sick or maybe it's a weekend depending on whatever you're doing, but like take a day and just spend that time on catching up on all the stuff that you've been putting off, because otherwise it's just going to pile on and pile on and pile on. And then you feel like you're this, really low performing person because you have emails and to-dos and all these things that are stacking up behind you. So I really don't like to have much of a to-do list. I like to get things done every day, try to catch up and in the day with very little to-dos or work in the future. And as a CEO, you do have, sometimes you have these like multi-month projects you're working on. And those are tough because you just can't do them in an afternoon. So I think when you're overwhelmed and you have that big growing to-do list, sometimes it's worth 4, 6, 7 hours on a Saturday, or it's just saying, hey, I'm clocking out early today. I'm going home, or I'm going to my safe space, wherever that may be. Maybe it's a library. Like, I'm just going to hammer out all this work that I got to catch up on. Feels really good.
Right. Yeah, no. And I jokingly, and I'll put it on my calendar, I call it work conference. Like, I'll block out time to conference with my work.
Nice.
And that really helps with focus. And then, we obviously with a number of clients and all of them having a lot of tasks, we have a project management system. But I like to use, have you tried Trello out?
Yeah, we use Trello. I really like Trello.
Yeah, so I use Trello, but I only put my top things for that day, like what I need to focus on that day, on Trello.
Nice.
And so I kind of like, that's part of my process is every day I'm like, okay, what are the things I'm going to accomplish today? And keeps it from getting overwhelming.
Absolutely. We use it. We call it the daily 3. It's our 3 non-negotiables that we must get done every
Right.
day. And so right now, that's our theme. It's own your 3. And so in our company, every day, everyone has a daily huddle. And in that daily huddle, you line out your 3 non-negotiables for the day. So
Right.
like we can see how aligned we are as a company on what our non-negotiables are individually. And when you get those done in the morning, it just is a great feeling to be like, all right, I got my 3 daily non-negotiables done. It's 10 a.m. and like I'm playing with house money from here on out. Like whatever I do now is going to be great, but I got the things
Right.
that I need to get done. And that comes from Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was really big on non-negotiables, and he would refuse to take meetings or talk on the phone or even engage in a conversation that was not in his daily, whether it was 1, 2, or 3 daily non-negotiables that he created. He would cancel
Right.
meetings with, executives from all over the world and just say, nope, that's not in my focus for today.
Right. Right. Well, and he got so much further by doing that.
Yeah. I mean, you can see when he came back to rescue Apple in his second act, it was very clear that his style of leadership, although somewhat harsh and abrasive, was exactly what was needed in that technology juggernaut. Ron, we're going to start wrapping up, but I wanted to ask you, being in the tech sector in the 90s and early 2000s, what was that like watching companies start up that like Google and Apple, who at the time it's just another name, right? It wasn't who they are today. What was something that you noticed about the companies that ultimately did become successful and became some of the big names of today versus those that, we don't talk about anymore, like Circuit City or some of these other companies that just never really made it through that transitional period in the early 2000s?
Yeah, well, so it's kind of been a crazy ride. So when I started in technology, literally there were thousands, hundreds to thousands of people in it, not hundreds of thousands to millions of people. And so, kind of, I had the opportunity to work with all these crazy smart individuals. But a lot of the difference between the companies that made it and didn't make it and really a lot of times in tech, it's not that they don't make it, they get acquired. And so the companies that really have become predominant, they, had a plan, but they also brought in experts and they didn't call it SOPs at the time, but they developed processes, they developed culture, and they were willing to grow. Whereas a lot of companies, unfortunately, their founder or leaders aren't willing or able to evolve or change.
Yeah, interesting.
And so it's like constant evolution and constant, change and just kind of. And this is not as prominent of a concept, but Kaizen, the relentless pursuit of perfection. So just continually pursuing improvement. And a lot of companies, won't do that and embracing change, right? So you talk a lot about AI and, this afternoon, one of my big meetings is my team coming to me with all the new processes we're going to use to deliver more value to our customers. And if you look back on technology and just in business, there's these different inflection points that now are completely obvious.
Right.
And other companies just like blow past it.
So it's really you don't want to miss those inflection points. So you got to be like open, you got to be humble, and what worked yesterday, a lot of people are like, well, it's
not going to work.
Yeah, it's not going to work tomorrow. Gosh.
Right, and then coming back to landscaping, and business is understanding who you are. So, a lot of people may play video games out there, and at a certain point, people are like, "Oh, Nintendo is dead." And they're going to go away, because Sony'd come out with the PlayStation, and and Sega had a good offering, and all these guys had these great offerings. And Nintendo, they're like, we're not going to worry about the fancy graphics. We're not going to worry about this. We're just going to focus on having really fun and playable games. And that's literally, they have never been the technology leader. They really aren't. But the reason why they've continued to compete in the gaming space is they just focused on their core, which was, providing good games. And similarly in landscaping, you need to figure out who your people are and focus on them.
Focus on your people. Yeah. First who, then what? That's great. Oh, Ron, I think that's a great place to wrap it. What a great conversation today. Bunch of marketing, a lot of work-life balance tips, and some good ideas around why change is so important as a leader in today's economy. Super exciting. Hey, man. Well,
super great being here, by the way.
Hey, it's my pleasure. How can people get a hold of you? I think digital marketing is so important, and you have done such a great job. How can people get a hold of you and your business?
So they can reach out to everbearingservices.com. My email is rmccabe@everbearingservices.com, or my LinkedIn is just Ron McCabe. So fairly easy ways to reach out. And if somebody has any questions, we're glad to answer them. And, if you just need some guidance or if you need some support, we'd love to help people out.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate everything you do for the industry, and it's been really fun getting to know you, and I look forward to seeing you at another conference or one of our get-togethers here soon.
Well, I have a fairly strong opinion that you'll be at the Equip.
I will be there.
And probably be at NALP too, right?
Oh, yeah, I'll be at both, and we're having an Equip kickoff party on Tuesday, the 21st. So
cool.
If you want to stop by, you always have an open invite to all of our Disruptor events. So
cool. All right, man.
All right.
That sounds great.
All right, Ron. Thanks so much for being on the show today. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to Trades Talk, where the next generation of disruptors comes to raise the bar. If you got value from today's episode, share it with someone in the trades who's ready to level up. For more tools, insights, and community, follow host Justin White and join the movement at jwhitegroup.com.